Well, good morning. How are you today? Welcome to this edition of Tech Talk with Zicel. Hopefully you are doing well today. My name is Tri Win. I am one of the product managers here at Zicel, and looking forward to working with you and talking to you about our topic today, which is Beyond Gigabit. We're doing this pretty much kind of every Tuesday. Hopefully we can get together and do some talk about any kind of topics that you want. So if you have any specific topics you also want me to cover, let me know. Send me an email. My email I'll show at the end as well, but it's try@zicel.com. Pretty much we want it to be a little bit interactive. So let me open up my chat box and my Q&A section here. If you have any questions throughout the discussion, feel free to use the Q&A and we will get to that. It's echoing. I don't know why it's echoing. Hold on a sec. Let me see if that will work. How about now? Is there no longer an echo? My speakers are actually off. It's plugged into my headphones, but yeah, usually I don't have a problem. So maybe this will help. Same still echo. Let me see.
We change to this one. How about now? Does it seem as bad to me? Okay, this is better. All right, so I just turned off whatever I turned off. So I changed my microphone, so maybe this will be better. All right, thank you so much for that. So yeah, I mean, hopefully you guys are also probably as well as me in a situation where we're working remote. Zicel is still in operation. Just so to let you know, all of our partners. You may have received an email already from us, but our warehouses are still open. Obviously, we're practicing distancing there and doing all these different protocols, make sure everything is functional, clean, and we're still shipping product out to our distributors. Also doing drop ship still as well. So we still have products coming in from the manufacturing side and lots of products that's still available for you as, you know, from your point of view. So rest assured that all the sales team are all now remote. We're all out of our offices. We have access. We are a technology company, so thankfully we have all this kind of remote access now built up that we could work remote. So I'm at my house, and so hopefully you all are safe as well. But again, we're going to be talking about a little bit about Zicel, a little bit about the topic of discussion, which is 10 gig. And also open it up for any questions. So again, use the Q&A section. So again, thank you so much for bearing with me as we just work out those mic issues. I was noticing some echo as well, but I couldn't figure out where it was, so I just changed my input completely. So let's just dive on in and we'll get started. So Zicel has been around for 30 years. We just celebrated our 30th year last September. We've been around for quite a long time, since 1989. I'm out of the Anaheim office, so Anaheim, California. So we've been on lockdown for a week already. So it's surreal, but we can continue to do business. And we have over 1,500 employees worldwide. And a lot of those offices, they're also locked down as well. So they're all scattered everywhere. But very importantly, we serve 700,000 businesses, use Zicel solutions in 150 markets, creating 100 million devices. Now, just to kind of let you know too, next week on Thursday, I have I'm doing actually a special kind of out of the box, not a typical one. It's still a tech talk, but it's going to be on a Thursday because we wanted to get it in as soon as possible. But it's going to talk about VPN, remote access. How can businesses use Zicel solutions or find ways using our solutions to offer remote connectivity, either from a home office, from home, or remote, or wherever they're at. So I'm going to cover all those about VPN, SSL VPN, all those as well. So make sure you keep an eye out for that next week on Thursday. So we continue to connect businesses using our commercial products. I primarily manage the security appliances, the wired LAN connections, so all your Ethernet connectivity. Sean, which also does some of the tech talks as well, he manages the wireless and the Nebula connectivity, also with some of the home stuff. But that's where I'm focused in, and I'm also kind of watching over and in charge of all of our VAR sales team, so working in the sales side as well. But we have products that are in the security appliance that gives you that VPN connectivity with security and your firewall functionality, wireless LAN connectivity, Ethernet with fiber, gateways that offer you hotspot functionality, and then manage it either on a standalone or through a cloud solution. So pretty much what I tell partners is we have a solution that covers everything, in the network. So any kind of connectivity you need, whether in the home or business or in the commercial area, we have products that fulfill that. So today's topic is what I call Beyond Gigabit. It's all about 10 gig multi-gig solutions, right? I think before 10 gig has always been there, but I think the adaptive, businesses accepting 10 gig connectivity for the price point didn't really make sense yet because it wasn't really mass produced, or there were not applications that are, taking advantage of the 10 gig kind of space that kind of pushes the envelope, right? There was no big reasons why people wanted to upgrade to those kinds of switches to pay more for something that they weren't really using. But also as networks evolved, you had solutions that were more complex, like say in the hotel scenarios or even places that had bigger networks. You got to make sure that your local network, at least your core of your network, was of 10 gig. So it had to be of higher speed, otherwise it would become a bottleneck. But what we want to introduce today too is something that's much more cost effective as well, but still offer you the flexibility of going beyond gigabit. And that's what we call multi-gig. So multi-gig solutions, I'll talk about in a bit, but I wanted to cover some of the naming conventions here at Zycel with our switches so that you could just kind of understand, make sure that we're all on the same page. So ES, it's kind of an old technology already. It's just Ethernet switch. It has a 10100 switching capacity. A GS switch, when it starts with that naming convention, that means it's a gigabit switch. XS is what is going to be what we're going to talk about mostly today. Those are all the ports typically are 10 gig. The X just stands for 10 gig. And so that includes multi-gig, also 10 gig switches that are all those ports functional like that. XGS is kind of special. It's primarily a GS switch, so it's a gigabit switch, but has 10 gig uplinks. So that's where the XGS comes into play. MGS you don't have to worry about because those are carrier switches. And if it comes at the end of it has a P or an HP, it means it's a PoE product. Now, you'll notice as well, we'll talk about PoE++, and even with high-powered ultra PoE, it will still be, nomenclature will still be HP. So there's not a, HPP, like, kind of naming convention, but just keep that in mind. And then fiber is just a fiber switch with an F, okay? So also we have switch, what we call combo ports. And a combo port is both an Ethernet and a fiber port that are connected kind of together. So you have to use one or the other. That's the flexibility of a combo port, is you can either use it as an additional Ethernet port. Typically, if it has a PoE on it, it does not offer PoE on those uplink ports. So you'll see that, like, in this particular switch across here. So typically may have like 2 or 4 combo ports, so that's where the naming convention. But you'll kind of understand that when you see that. So that's what's in the single switch. It helps you to have flexibility whether you're using fiber or another Ethernet copper uplink. So this fiber may not be available in those scenarios. And then fiber ports, it comes in SFP and SFP+. SFP is just a gigabit fiber port that requires transceivers, like a gigabit transceiver to be put in there. And the transceivers go different lengths. Or even different types of wavelengths. So it depends on what your solution is and what kind of fiber you have. SFP Plus means that it is a 10 gig capable fiber transceiver port. And you have to, again, use like 10G transceivers. So we want to introduce to you what we call multi-gig and PoE++. It's the ultra PoE solution. What is, multi-gig or 10 gig, right? So it can offer obviously up to 10 times more of the throughput than what your traditional gigabit, and also do twice as much PoE power in the solution. So using your standard cable, so here's a graph of what different cabling that you may have available, either Cat5e, Cat6, and Cat6a. And if you notice that multi-gig is gigabit, 2.5 gigabit standard, 5 gigabit, and 10 gig capable. So that's what multi-gig, kind of the definition of it. You have to be careful when you're looking at switches that are in the market today. A lot of them will just be like either a 1 gig and a 2.5 gig, and they'll just call that multi-gig. And they may or may not have like 10 gig uplinks, right? It depends on the switch. But just have to keep watch of that, because what we offer, and I'll show you in just a bit, all of the ports are capable of 10 gig, all the way through all of the multiple multi-gig solution ports or different port configurations. Whereas a lot of the competitors may only have like 1 or 2 ports that's doing the multi-gig, and everything else is, you know, gigabit. So you have to watch that, especially from a price point standpoint. You might say, well, why is this one more expensive than the other? Again, you have to judge that both on power for PoE, the budget, and also how many ports are multi-gig. But you can see if you have Cat5e, you can pretty much go everything except for 10 gig speeds on the ports typically, but you could still offer PoE++, which is our 60 watt standard. Cat5.6, so you want to get to at least Cat5. Cat5 will go 10 gig up to 55 meters. And if you're doing Cat6, and then if you're doing Cat6A, then it can go to the full 100 meters of Ethernet. All right, so that's the 300 plus feet of Ethernet, the limitations on that. So you just have to watch that if you're looking for certain types of speeds on that copper space. Of course, now more applications means that you need more speed. So businesses really need to kind of plan for that. They have higher demands, especially, you know, in the office. Well, maybe not right now, nobody's in the office per se, but you still have your servers, you have your networks that are built there for storage. And Gigabit is pretty slow in that regard. So you have to worry about the wireless traffic and also all the storage traffic, everything that needs to go in. So you definitely need to think about either multi-gig or gigabit or 10 gig speeds within the core, and even multi-gig to some of those devices, such as AP or maybe your storage devices. If they don't support 10 gig, then you can look for the alternative, which is in between. So we also, so what we launched is basically our XS 1930 series. These will be available in distribution. They're already available in our warehouse now if you're needing to pick up some of the different options that are there. Maybe you want to pick some, so to do some initial testing of multi-gig. So we have a few of those units here, but in quantity, it's going to be available beginning of, I think, in April. So we'll have those in the distribution side, barring, of course, that those products shipped can get there and can be received and can be, you know, disseminated within those if there's no further shutdowns. But I think all the distributors are safe. They pretty much have told us that they're still in operation. They're providing basically essentials, right? People need to access a lot of these kind of products for their efforts while they stay home. So multi-gig, IEEE 802.3BZ, multi-gig capable switches with PoE, non-PoE options. So it helps to give you that future proof of the technology to feed these applications. So there are a lot of applications that need more power. So the you know, basically before we had some 802.11n wireless, you know, some basic things that don't need so much power, but currently there are more and more applications, more and more devices that are starting to now come out to use actually the 60 watt PoE power. So this becomes a, you know, very big application moving forward as more and more devices like Wi-Fi AX, so Wi-Fi 6, pan-tilt zoom cameras, laptop computers that can be powered by PoE, access control devices that are, you know, maybe more digital or whatever, POS readers, nurse call systems, kiosks that have no power plug but are just powered by PoE. Excuse me. So, you know, you need that 60 watt power because typically your old standard that we're currently used to uses the 30 watt standard. So 802.3AT, those use a 2-pair PoE, whereas the new standard uses a 4-pair PoE. So it uses that BT PoE standard for these applications. And of course, the major application, kind of why we really kind of pushed forward in making a multi-gig type switch, is to pair it up with our you know, Wi-Fi 6 AX access points. So our WAX 650S, our WAX 510S, those are all capable of doing wireless speeds of 3.4 gigs and 1.8 gigs of throughput. So obviously that's already beyond you know, gigabit speeds. Now, of course, that's kind of the max theoretical. What it actually pushes through on the 650S is still above gigabit. So that's why those particular devices come with multi-gig ports on them to connect at 2.5 gigs into a switch that can support multi-gig. So it definitely is recommended for you to use a multi-gig switch like the XS 1930s to make sure that you're pushing its max capacity, not only for the capacity of the traffic, but also enabling the power that's required. So these APs, if you already have gotten some, or you're testing them right now, you may notice that even if you plug it into your 30 watt, 802.3 AT standard PoE switches, they will still fire up, and actually they will still perform very well. But the problem is that they're performing at a kind of a lower setting, right? So they can't push as much throughput because maybe the certain antennas are turned off, or certain radios are turned off. So you're really kind of handicapping the AP from what it's really made to do. So you want to ensure that you're providing it with power, because enough power, because these devices at its draw, it's drawing about 32 watts, which is above your 30 watt standard, which only gives you maybe 28, I think 27 or 28 actual usable wattage in that standard. So you have to use a switch that allows for you to give it, that 60 watt standard, or at least what the maximum draw of the product is, to give it maximum usage. So make sure that that's available. And also on this particular switch, all of the ports support the PoE standard, and it has a very large power budget. It's only an 8-port switch, but has 375 watts of power. And not only that, it does it intelligently. All of the Zycell smart PoE technology that you already know about with the consumption mode, that's implemented in this as well. So even though it's pushing the 60 watt, and this particular AP only uses 3132, so even if you multiply by 30, 30 on average, that's only 240 watts of budget, that's going to be used by these access points. So really all of the ports can then power up any one of those kinds of devices. Now, of course, if you're balancing some of these other applications, like the the laptop type that's powered by PoE, then more likely it's going to get closer to that 60 watts. So you just have to manage your budget as necessary. Now, the good thing is that the Ultra PoE, or PoE++, is backwards compatible. So those ports can still use for any of your 15 watt or 30 watt PoE devices. So that's, kind of universal. But of course, if you're paying for the, kind of the higher speed, the higher cost, the higher power budget, it's primarily made for these kinds of high applications. So it's an industry first. It has a display that lets you see all of the different multi-gig traffic, right? So whatever the port is, the speed of the port. Gives you all 5 colors basically, and I'll show you a closer example of that. Supports multi-gig on all the ports. So your current cable, you don't have to change out your cable unless you want to get to 10 gig. You need to get to that Cat 6. But if you already have existing Cat 5, then this product will work just perfectly fine in those. Wade just asked a question. Can you say anything about, or can you say again about the power consumption and budget? Okay, so here's what happens. Let's go back. Or let's just say right here, in an access point, if you do classification mode, it will just say, hey, I need 60 watts. And so a switch in classification type mode, which a lot of the competitors have, it will allocate and budget out 60 watts. So let's just say for just simplicity standpoint, for us in this example, let's say the switch only had 240 watts in the budget. Then I could only power, if it is in consumption mode, it would only power up 4 access points, because it's going to budget out 60 watts for each access point. But of course, the access point in real life, its actual usage and its actual draw, max draw is only 30, let's say 30 watts, right? Then technically, you've wasted a lot. You've wasted 30 watts of that power, into a budget that's not actually being used. So here, if you use consumption mode, the Zycell has smart PoE, we call intelligent PoE. It actually uses consumption mode and allocates only what the device actually uses and draws. So the 30 watt is then balanced within the 240. So it's taken away from the 240, which means you can actually have 8 devices powered up at 30 watts each. And the budget will allow for it, because that's what's actually being drawn. So instead of 4 switches to be powered, it's now 8 switches can be powered by that same exact budget. That's how the intelligent PoE works. So that's what we have in our solutions by default now. So when you plug in your devices, you can see that, you can see the draw. And so it really helps for you to get, maximize how many access points or how many devices you can really use into the system. So it helps for you to really balance, load balance pretty much what you're actually using and what different devices may be used for these PoEs. Every port except for the uplink ports, and you can see the PoE models at the bottom here. We have a yellow stripe that tells you which ones are the PoE ports, but those 8 PoE ports are 802.3 BT standard, so each one of those can supply you 60 watts. Again, now since the technology is a lot newer and you'll see something like low cost competition, they may only have 1 or 2 ports that is set for 60 watt. Everything else is your normal 30 watt standard. The budgets typically are lower than ours. So you have to just keep watch, even though they may market it as this is a 60 watt, BT PoE plus switch, but they only have 1 or 2 ports that is actually doing 60 watts. So again, keep that in mind as the technology is newer. We basically went for, we know that there's going to be a point where everyone needs every port to be PoE plus. So this is how we're going forward. So we're not going to do kind of that interim small switch just to kind of meet some low price point, because this is the application. If you really want just 15 watts, there's a lot of cost-effective alternatives for you to use, even with 10 gig uplinks for that particular space. It's also very quiet. It uses smart fan technology, so it only spins it as it needs to maintain the temperature cooling. So a lot of these switches are a lot lower. It's actually one of the lowest in the industry when you compare it against all of the other competitors. So that it can be used well even in an office environment. And you get to, the cool thing about it is how many of you, by just raise of hands, know of or have used a Nebula already? Great, thank you, Joe, David, Dan. So the cool thing is that Nebula, our cloud solution now is well beyond 40,000 devices that are in the cloud now. So we've been managing that. David asked a question, does iCell make an 802.11b TPU injector? We currently do not have a PoE injector except for the ones that come with, I think, our outdoor access point. They have one included in that because it does use, it's a pan tilt, it's a one that has a heater and everything in it. So it has an injector built into it, or has it built for it. But other than that, the closest you can get to kind of a PoE injector, we do have a switch that is like a 4-port switch, our GS 1350-6 HP. It's like a 4-port switch or a 5-port switch with some uplinks, and 2 of the ports can be used for BT. But it's only a 60 watt solution in terms of the PoE budget, so you have to manage it. It's probably just still functioning as a single port in most cases if you have a bigger draw on that BT. So that's probably your closest option right now to like an injector. I will check with our product management to see. Currently there isn't we haven't had much demand for a BT injector, because a lot of the solutions that already supply you like a pan tilt zoom that needs a higher PoE, the BT, will already supply you with an injector a lot of times because it's not readily available. It's a little bit harder to find. So a lot of times they will include it like we used to do in the past with our PoE products. But this will allow for you to then now have consolidation into a particular switch if you're looking for that, or if maybe those vendors aren't offering like an injector, then you have this option. So the port count is relatively small. It has 8 ports. So if you are running a lot of those pan tilt zoom cameras, then you have this option to do that, or within your server system, however it is. But it gives you that support for the 5 speeds. So 100 meg, 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and 10 gig on those ports. And it's using copper, so you don't have to deal with fiber. But it still has the 2 copper ports as an uplink, and it also has an additional 2 ports of SFP. So it gives you kind of 12 ports. And that's why the naming convention, when you see it say, dash 12 HP, it means there's 12 usable ports, right? So that's how it works. So we have dedicated uplinks. We have 4 uplinks on the 1930 down here. It has all the multi-gig. It has the display. The display lets you see whether or not you're using it in the cloud. It has a locator LED so that you can, from remote, either through the cloud or when you're logged into it, give it a flashing blink so that you can identify. So let's say you have a technician who's physically there and he doesn't know, you may have a stack of 10 switches here, and they're not sure which one to work on, and you're telling them, or he can blink, basically blink the locator light. He'll know which switch it is so that he can do whatever maintenance he needs to do, or switch ports or whatever it may be. But that's what that does. And it also has a maximum PoE indicator. I think I have a closer view of that as well. You can also restore it to a last custom default. So the cool thing about the last custom default, and some of our partners don't even realize that this even exists, you can basically create a configuration, right? You've gone and done the configuration at someone's office. Basically you've fully configured it how it should be, day one. You can take an image of it. So you save that configuration into what we call a custom default. And that gets saved almost like a saved state, right? It's like an image of what that switch looked like at that point. And if at any point there's something that is not right, or something's like wonky, and you want to get back to that, or maybe somebody accidentally changed some sort of configuration, or locked themselves out somehow, whatever it may be, you can go back and do that restore button, and it will restore back to that default. It does not go back to factory default. So that's what allows for you to do, is go back to that known configuration that you knew on day one, or whenever you decided to make that image, it goes back to that configuration. David asked a question, how do I use multiple WAXs without the XS switch? So that's why we have the XS switch. So in order to use to use multiple of our AX access points, you would want to use this switch. Now, again, like I mentioned, you could still use the WAX 650 in your standard 30 watt PoE, switches that are available today. Those will only supply, almost 30 watts. So I think typically, I think what ends up happening is one of the radios, or you end up, instead of like a 4x4 or whatever the configuration is, it scales down to basically, 11 AC, your previous kind of AC standards that you're used to, but it still does it really well. We have our customer, funny story, we had one of our customers receive one of these WAXs out there, and they plugged it in, they tested it, they said, this thing is fast, this thing is great, right? This thing is awesome. But they plugged it into our XGS 1930 switches, and it was only supplying it with 30 watts of power. And we said, wait, you're having these tests, but you're putting it on, which switch are you using? Because we hadn't sent them a 1930, an XS 1930 yet. So we were wondering why, he was, how he was powering it up. Was he using an injector or what? And he said, no, I'm just using one of your old switches. And we said, okay, you're getting a great result, but you're using it actually in a lower setting because it's not fully powered. So, but that's what you would have to do, David, is to have use this switch to then have multiple WAXs. But you could power up to eight of them using one of these switches. Okay. So the connectivity, there's just kind of the space. We have our XS 1930-12 HP, which has the PoE ports, 2 uplinks that are multi-gig copper, and also 2 additional ports that are SFP, which will do 1 gig and 10 gig transceivers. We also have a non-PoE version, so it's an 8-port multi-gig with 2 SFP uplinks. So there are some applications now. We already have partners who are looking at the 1930-10 that's supplying, either 10 gig connectivity to a location, being able to then split it up and offer multi-gig connectivity to the offices, right? So you can have this as either the concentrator, or you can have a 10 gig switch that's a concentrator, like our XS 3800 that has a lot of different port configurations. So it depends on how big your application is, but you could feed a 10 gig fiber or even copper connection to the prem, and then split it off however you wish. And these switches are they're web manageable and have some CLI in them as well. So keep track of that. We also will be working with these in the Nebula Cloud, so those are available to be used there. Again, like I mentioned, there's the 5 LEDs. So based on that single LED that's on the port, you'll see it flashed amber for 100 megabits, green for 1 gig, blue, the light blue for 2.5, purple for 5, and then the solid blue, which is the more standard, for 10 gig. So it allows for you to see that within the connected ports itself. So in the PoE mode, you can see also the LEDs will change. So this is actually one of our most colorful switches, I would say, in our product line. Oh, I just missed this question. Wade just asked, so the 60 watt is the max per channel. Yeah, so 60 watts is the port. Yeah, the port speed. Sorry, the port power. So you can use that 802, the BT standard 60 watt in those PoE ports. So yeah, even though the budget is 200 or 375, you can only do 60 per port max. Okay, so that's what that standard does. And you have to make sure as well your cabling has to be of that standard because it's using 4-pair to deliver the power instead of the 2-pair. So all the pairs are also delivering power at the same time in order to achieve that power budget. The LEDs will show if it's an AF, AT, or BT standard in the link light as well. It has a cloud LED, as I mentioned, and then there's a cool PoE usage, so you can get a quick visual on to see what the power consumption is currently. Now, of course, you can see all this within the GUI. So if you log into the device via the cloud, through Nebula, or through directly to the product, you can see what its consumption is currently. But if you're there on-prem, you can visually see it just by those indicators. So it'll show you if it's halfway full or three boxes. It's every 20%. So if it hits a red mark up here, then it's 80% or greater, right? So you can use that to see a quick visual on how much power you're actually consuming while you have these devices plugged in. A quick comparison to some of the models that you may end up seeing out there, like Ubiquiti, Netgear, D-Link, they have them as well. But from a pricing standpoint, our power budget is much higher than theirs. Netgear does have one that's a higher power, but they're all gigabit. They're not multi-gig, and they're primarily gigabit anyway. So that's why their price is also lower on these. D-Link does offer, like I mentioned, a multi-gig switch. They'll call it multi-gig, but it's an 8-port with only 2.5 gig. It doesn't really go up to 10 gig on any of those other ports. So, but it does have some uplinks at the 10 gig mark. So that's where we kind of stand and compare within the PoE space of that. And it's going to be about street price on like Amazon or whatever. That's what we kind of keep the reference price. Now, of course, you want to be a partner because you'll be getting your partner discounts on these models. So it's PoE capable, 60 watts, and it has a very high power budget, right? So, and that's what's required for Wi-Fi 6. Let me just blaze through these real quick. So that's really where we think, in order for you to power up Wi-Fi 6, you need a switch like this. Now, of course, in the future, we're going to be expanding the product line. You'll see more and more ports, come about with 10 gig, multi-gig, and also with PoE functionality. So it will really, as people start adopting Wi-Fi 6, more and more of these applications, then you'll have a switch that can meet those needs. Now, until then, this 8-port switch, we feel like you could stack a couple of them to get the port configurations that you need in order to meet those Wi-Fi 6 kind of application demands. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier, our smart PoE, intelligent PoE functionality using consumption mode rather than classification. So we intelligently monitor those PoE devices. We allocate the power as necessary. And so we put that as part of use it against our budget instead of the actual classification. We can control each port. So this is what makes it really powerful. You have access to it. So if it's like an IP camera that has either frozen or whatever, if the moment you know that it's frozen, you can log into the device either through Nebula, through standalone, and remotely access the port and basically power cycle just the port without having to power cycle the entire switch. So you can just power cycle those. And so these are good for those applications where maybe a computer, it's like a kiosk machine, right, that is not responding or has like an error and you need to get it to reboot. Rather than sending somebody out there to power cycle it physically, you can power it remotely through this system, right? Now, even with CLI and those kind of creative things that you can do, you can actually script your third-party monitoring program, if you're using a third-party monitoring program, to go in and see, okay, this device is down, it's not responding to me. I'm going to go ahead and automatically send a reboot. So you can do that through your syslogs or whatever it is, your SNMP logs and things like that. So you're monitoring that device and do the reboot. You can also schedule the device to be, power cycled, either just to do a loop power cycle, like you turn it off and turn it back on, or you can, power it off because, let's say, businesses right now, if no one's in the office, there's no need for there to be Wi-Fi, so that just becomes a potential security hole, or somebody trying to log into it, whatever it is. You can turn it off or schedule for it to be turned off during the off hours. Now, I did mention that this product could be used as Nebula. It is Nebula flexed, meaning that it can be used as a standalone device or be moved and managed into our Nebula central management system. So it has all those the flexibility, including free cloud solutions. So this is really a kind of a neat, I would say it's industry first of a free cloud solution that offers you 10 gig across the board with PoE, right? So it's using the flexibility of our cloud solution system and offering it into a 10 gig space that people are typically not using it that way. And all of our designs are, we pride in that. So we have a very high quality in our design. We do different types of thermal designs, thermal protection to help make sure that we use the components that can also handle higher operations than typical. So that's the other thing as well. You may see, hey, some of the other competitors, or maybe some of the low-end competitors are, very, very cheap, right? Very cost-effective, very valued products, or whatever, but they don't offer typically, the lifetime support that we have. So we have a lifetime warranty on our products because of the quality and the materials that we use to build our product, right? Both on the software and more importantly on the hardware as well. We also have smart fans, so it helps to give it longevity. The fans are using of a certain type that is very long lasting. So you can see that in our MTBFs in our data sheets on how long these products will last, or typical time between failures, right? Typically, fans and power supplies are the ones that are the culprits of what fails first. Fans, power supply, so we use noise filters to make sure that the power that comes into the device is very clean. We use solid state capacitors, and also we use very high industry standard power supplies as well. So across the board, we're looking at quality to make sure that something of this nature of your infrastructure is always available. So it's the most reliable piece, kind of in the whole network, or at least that's what we want it to be, because it's going to be the core, right? Whether you're using a wireless connection, whether you're using hardwire, everybody goes, hey, if I want to make sure that I'm connected, the good old Ethernet cable, if I plug in, I know I'm gonna have connectivity, right? And not have to deal with anything. So that's where the switch network is so key. And you should not, and I would, recommend that you should not, try to go maybe a route that may jeopardize your entire network, the functionality of your access points, if your switch network is not, functioning up to par, or is not as reliable. So making sure that that is stable and reliable will ensure that your other applications that you're using on top of it has that core to work off of. So, we use that solid state capacitor because that's one of the pieces that will typically either burn out or explode in a switch or in any kind of electronic device. And so we use those to make sure that, again, we have no problems with that. And I mentioned earlier with our smart fan, just for quiet operations, even if you wanted to install the switch itself within a local network. So here are some of the applications. Yeah, I don't know why my camera, I should, well, I don't know why it may jump in and out, but their speeds are not as good. So it could be some of my speeds here as well. But standalone, you can use it in a standalone application where you may have, a 5 gig server or 2.5 gig device that's connected to the network with wireless Wi-Fi 6 on there. So this is kind of a typical when you're just doing kind of a standalone. I had mentioned you can use it in a cloud management solution. So using the device in a cloud solution with our APs connected also in the cloud. So our hybrid AP, our WAX650S also is Nebula enabled. So it can be Nebula flexed. And you can use our Nebula gateway for a whole solution in the cloud. So all of that can be monitored. You can see all the traffic that's there. You can go and log into each one of the devices and see, hey, what's going on, see what kind of traffic's being utilized, who use it to troubleshoot. So we also have a series of Nebula webinars and Tech Talks if you're interested in that. There are some recordings as well, but we typically run a Nebula one every month. So you can just check some of the scheduling there to see if you can join that. Some additional comparisons on the non-PoE version. So our Access 1930-10 has, competitors are like Netgear, D-Link as well, but we still offer the multi-gig options, where some of these other solutions that are non-PoE, they only have either Gigabit or 10 gig. So they don't have the multi-gig options in between. And of course, they're only standalone. They don't have any kind of cloud management typically. And this is another comparison. So we've been using our products overall in many different applications, and this will continue to grow even with Wi-Fi 6 initiatives. Of course, now a lot of projects, and I don't know about you guys, I'd love to hear from you, how your business is affected by all of this, all the things that are going around in the US right now. And, how is your business affected in terms of, are you seeing, schools or applications or projects pretty much being put on hold, or are you seeing them accelerated because of the application that they need, remote access, or they need to get these networks going for that kind of remote access? Or we see even in education right now, right, everybody's doing web-based applications, or using conferences, WebEx and Zoom to do online class kind of communications to try to keep things moving forward. But again, even the networks need to be maintained, because sometimes they're still doing it within the school, not necessarily at home. So utilizing those networks. So yeah, let me know. I'm interested to see how your business is affected by it. For us, it's all dependent on you as the customer. So we would love to see how we could support you and make sure that our product and stuff like that is available. So in the smart classroom here, we see you can utilize the solution as well. With the 10 gig server, XS 3800s, XGS 2210s, like in there. So just building like a whole central network where we could use now gigabit fiber to certain applications, or go to 10 gig Ethernet. Oops. So the other application that we typically use, or is very successful for Zycel, is in the hospitality space as well. And we see it actually going through another cycle of upgrades. So again, if you are in the hospitality space, we'd love to hear what's happening there. We know that a lot of the, hotels like in Vegas have shut down completely for the time being. So, how is it in your space and what you're seeing, for people who are in maybe the smaller ones? I don't know why it says hold on a sec. Can you hear me? It says it was there. I don't know. Okay, so maybe my mic is cutting out. Something's going on with my network. Anyways, the hospitality, that's one of our big applications. So being able to use that in this, use our products in that. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Usually I'm perfectly fine here on the network. So I wonder if it's kind of my network connectivity right now going on. Maybe it's affecting all of that from here in the office, or from my home office. But we use, hospitality solutions across the board, and we've been quite successful with that. That's really weird that I'm getting microphone issues. It shouldn't be. So I can see it here, but sorry for that. Well, I guess it's part of normal life these days. Things getting interrupted. But our hospitality solution
You can have all the meeting rooms, multicast with video. You need 10 gig because you're doing a lot of these applications across the board, using video that's going to the monitors, to the systems, you know, all that is all connected with via 10 gig in the core now with an XS 3800, but of course you can use the 1930s in there as well. So we see more and more applications of this going on for hospitality. Now we do have some other options with 10 gig. And so you have options either in a smart managed switch, layer 2 switch. If you want fully managed solutions, our XGS 2210 series is a good option. It primarily is 10 gig uplinks and gigabit ports. Okay, so remember the naming convention again for that. You have access to layer 3 functionalities again with gigabit and 10 gig uplinks. So layer 3 functionalities. And then if you're looking for some of the higher end models to do layer 3 or layer 3 higher functionalities, and that's there as well. And then also the 3700, 3800s, the XS series. 3800s, what is currently available. Those are the models that you want to currently use. If you're doing multi-gig, it has multiple multi-gig ports with copper, and then also 10 gig fiber uplinks. And then lastly is our fiber accessories. So if you're doing 10 gig fiber uplinks, we have our accessories there. Now, if you want to connect switches together, we advise for you to use our direct attach cables, the DAC 10G switches or connectors. This is a great value because it gives you a pre-made 10 gig transceiver that is already pre-made for like 1 meter and 3 meters long. So you're able to connect them into, you know, maybe a stack of switches within your rack, or interconnect them together, right, using these cables. And they're a lot more cost effective as well, because you're getting 2 transceivers and the fiber cable in between for a lot lower than even buying a, you know, like a single 10G transceiver sometimes. So take advantage of that to make the connectivity between the switches. And then lastly is our ZAP program. Our ZAP program is a Zycel approved partner program. And when you join that, if you're not already a partner, when you first join, you are automatically in the silver. It doesn't cost you anything. But in order to maintain silver pricing or silver discounts at distribution, you need to have 6,000 sales of $6,000 in, you know, a 6-month period. So in that 6-month period, we'll evaluate and have you either bump up to gold if you can hit 12K per that period. And what that offers you is 20% off of your distribution pricing. It gives you all access to deal registration. So no matter what partner you are, whether you're bronze, silver, or gold, you have access to deal registration, these webinars, free tech support, US based. You have leasing options, also a dedicated account manager. But of course, we want you to get to the gold because it has the higher discounts, right? Has the higher margins for you. Now, all of the programs in silver and in bronze, you can still do you know, different deal registrations as well. So take advantage of that. If you have a bigger project that is either 5K MSRP, then you can deal reg it and you can get the maximum. Also protects you, protects your opportunity as well. All right. And so lastly is, again, thank you. If you have any other further questions, or if something skipped for you and you didn't quite hear a certain slide, let me know. If not, you can also email me, try@zycel.com. If you have any questions. You can follow us on Facebook. That's where we're also broadcasting live as well to Facebook. So send me a question if you have to, if you want to, or if you have any particular topics you want me to discuss. Again, next week we will be doing on Thursday a special, like a Zycel Tech Talk on the Thursday with the VPN solutions, remote access solutions, that. So Carnegie asks, which offers CLI and IPv6? So all of them actually will offer IPv6 support there, Carnegie. And CLI, all of the models will support like a base CLI. There's not going to be the full featured CLI as you'll see in a 2210 series, but it will support the majority of the ones that you need. Oh, and thank you, David, for that comment. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're working hard to try to make everything, everything work, and everything, at least from our end, as much business as usual as possible. I think if anything, like, being at home, there are usually other potential distractions. But luckily for me, I have my own like office space that I can pretty much lock myself away. And so the normal like office day-to-day distractions that you have, they're not there anymore. So I almost feel like, I'm being more productive. I'm not going out to lunch, so right. So I'm just working through lunch. Kind of feels like sometimes. I pretty much can roll out of bed, shower, come in, and just sit at my desk, right? So there's no commute time. So I'm already saving, 45 minutes each way or so, in terms of commute time. So hopefully you guys are also taking advantage of that as well. But I know some of you are having to go, and so that's where my question is to you as well, is how is it affecting your business, having to go either do installations? Are your customers saying, hey, don't show up because we don't want you to come here to do installations, or what it is, right? I'm curious on how you are still maintaining your business. Now, of course, Nebula, here's a pitch for Nebula, which I think would be, pretty good one, is that you could potentially send, an install kit for Nebula that's already pre-configured. You've already scanned it and all, right? Or you just know you've added it to the serial number, or even the customer can get it shipped to them and they can supply you with that information. Either way, you can have an install kit built where you don't even necessarily need a technician to even go on site. They can receive a package that says, here's my Zycel, or here's my service install kit, and it's powered by Nebula, and they just need to plug in, your internet connection goes into this firewall or switch, your switch then plugs into the AP, and then we got it from there, right? So you can then do the auto provisioning of these devices, and you can do the configuration remotely. So it's pretty much hands off, right? We need FIDO2 support for Nebula. That's noted there, Carnegie. I think they are working on that. All right. If there are no other questions, then I thank you and appreciate you very much for being a Zycel partner. Again, my name is try@zycel.com. If you want to send me an email, or if you want to just talk about anything about your business, let us know. Again, reach out to any of our sales team. Both Ivan and Jacob are ready and anxious to talk to you. If you have any solutions, any opportunities, and again, we'd love to know how your business is doing and how we can continue to support you. So thank you, Wade, for that as well. Thank you for attending. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a safe rest of your week. We'll see you again next week, hopefully, for that VPN solution, remote access solution. So see you then. Thank you again for joining Zycel.